Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Some Extent. We are doing a virtual, I guess, episode today because both Lex and I are traveling. So we're going to be here. How have you been? Tell us where you are.
Yeah, I'm good. Doing some Memorial Day traveling right now. So I'm in Massachusetts, in Boston right now. Seeing some family, which is great. The weather here is awesome. So I know you've been on a travel stint yourself. So uh, tell us where you've been and how your travels have been going.
Yeah, I just was in Las Vegas for work. Um, that was so fun. We went to the Mirage for a customer marketing alliance summit. So that was really cool. That was probably my first, I guess, experience in person for work that I've had that we're not hosting the event. So it was really cool just to not, be scrambling and hosting and making sure everyone's okay. It was nice to be the audience and actually get to learn and just sit down and meet people, and it was a really great experience. PSA, for anyone that ever says work isn't fun, that's a lie. Work is fun and can be fun. And I think last week proved that for me.
It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that, like there's all these big work meetings and people always meet up there for work, but it's probably one of the worst places to get work done.
Yeah, I asked why, and it's basically because there's so many hotels and there's so much room in Vegas. All the conferences are always open. There's always like a ton of room blocks open. So that's like the main reason. Also, it's because, if you sign up for a summit and it's in, not to shit on like Idaho, but Idaho, you're like, compared to Vegas, like people want to go to Vegas.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I'm just thinking like the amount of distractions that are in Vegas are multiplied so many. So like getting work
Yeah.
done makes it like 10 times harder, I feel like.
Yeah, we weren't really working on our actual, like, job stuff, we were working on the conference and meeting new people, and, like, my computer wasn't
Yeah.
open the entire time. So,
It's like a networking
um
event almost.
right. Now I'm back in Chicago for my sister's high school graduation, and then I'm going to Montreal and Vermont for a wedding. So, I've been go, 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 which is why we're here, but
Yeah, that's a world tour.
yeah, a little bit, but it's been fun. Can't complain. Um, but today we wanted to talk about, I want to interview Lex this time, which is something we haven't really done before. Lex has ran a marathon now and then just recently ran the Denver half marathon. So I wanted to interview him and have him share his experience, his training, all of that good stuff with you all in case you guys might be interested in running a marathon or getting into running in general. Um, how's that sound?
Yeah, no, it sounds great. I think there's different levels to getting into running, and I'll dive into more of my experience, but there's people who want to get in on certain levels. So I can speak to my experience, but I can't tell you what's going to work for you. So I
Right.
can just give you my trials and tribulations.
All right, to start, what influenced you to run the marathon in the first place? And kind of walk us through what marathon did you decide to run? Because there's so many choices. And yeah, I guess what made you want to do it? What was your first motivation?
My first marathon, well, it's actually been my first and my only, was the Chicago Marathon, which is like ranked usually one of the top marathons to do if you're going to do one. But I can get into the reasons why that is later. I think starting off, I it was a bit of an impulsive decision. So I didn't really realize what I was getting myself totally into. It was during right when the pandemic had started and I was at home and I had a ton of time on my hands. I was still in school, but school wasn't taking up a ton of my time. It was more of just an afterthought, and then I'm like, what do I do with the rest of my 8 hours of the day? And so I was like, all right, I might as well just get into running or something because it was still summer outside, and you could only pretty much the only thing you could do is get outside and run
Mhm.
or do something because you couldn't stay inside unless you were inside your house. So I think a lot of people are going to have similar experiences as me doing this because that's kind of what happened is there was a ton of stuff, there was a ton of free time and not a lot to do. And so getting outside was one thing and running was just so an easy way to get an exercise. Like the gyms weren't even open. So it was like I bet a ton of people took up running at that time. And I think for me, I was like, I'm just gonna run the Chicago Marathon because I think it could be fun. And I had never run before, so like I know a lot of people were. I know you did like track and field, cross country stuff in high school. Like I never did any of that, and so people who like don't do that kind of come up to me and are like, "Oh, but I like you probably ran a lot in high school or whatever. Like you probably just picked it up back in college." And I was like, "No, like I didn't run at all. Like I'd never done a running event or running uh like I never ran more than a mile for no reason. So it was a huge like put me out of my comfort zone type of thing. Uh and but the good thing was I did have a ton of time during COVID to train. The bad thing was COVID lasted a little longer and all my training meant nothing because the marathon got canceled. So I trained the entire summer, was ready to go, and then it got canceled in October. So that was my first experience with a marathon that I never actually ran.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember you going through that, and weren't you doing it with one of our friends too? Or I remember you were training for a
I had
while.
talked to a few of our friends about running it together, but I was the only one who like actually signed up. And once you sign up, you're like you're stuck into doing it. It's like you pay this money to do this. Like I have to do this. And then also what I want to say is like my maybe like a first piece of advice is like if you're thinking about running a marathon, you're thinking about running an event, even if it's a half or a 5K or a 10K, anything like that. The one of the hardest parts, if not the hardest part, is just signing up and committing yourself to doing something like that because I know a lot of people who are like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run the marathon. Like I'm gonna run this 10K. And when it comes sign up time, they don't sign up. And obviously you can't run it if you don't sign up. So
Right.
signing up means you're locked in. You're either gonna waste, I don't know, some like the marathon was pretty expensive. It was like $200. You're gonna waste that much money or you're gonna run it. So like that's when you decide like what am I gonna do here? So I think signing up was always the toughest part for a lot of people. And like after I signed up, I was locked in. I was like, I gotta commit to this, and I already committed financially, so I might as well just commit physically as well.
That's always the craziest part to me is how expensive it is to actually run that race. I feel like it shouldn't be that much. And I know you like get a lot. You get the t-shirts and you go to the expo and you get free, sugar whatever things that you eat. I don't know what they're called, like goos or those little waffles and energy drinks and stuff like that, but it is pretty damn expensive to run in a race.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's one thing that turns a lot of people away as well is the amount of money you have to put down at first is expensive. I did just
Mhm.
finish the half marathon, which is about half the price of a regular marathon, uh, which can also be a way to kind of get around that if you're looking to do something cheaper. But yeah, that
Mhm.
is. It's like it's once you spend that kind of money to do something, it's really hard to back out of it. So I would agree with that, and I think that was kind of the reason. After I spent that money, it was kind of the reason why I was like fully all into training and doing that kind of thing because I was like, I can't skip out on this again.
I personally have never run a marathon at all or a half marathon, that's not me, but another thing I've seen from watching you train and get into it is you would expect running not to be an expensive sport because what you're just running. You don't need like a bike, let's say, or a wetsuit or a ball of some sort. You're just running, you're using your body. But that's not true. You actually do have to get a lot of different equipment and it adds up, obviously. I remember going to REI with you. There's a huge REI in Denver. We went, I think, every week before the like your big marathon. But can you walk the audience through kind of what you decided to get for your marathon? And I know a lot of it's optional, but it was helpful for you. So, can you walk us through what you got, why you decided to get it, and what equipment you used?
Yeah. So I'll touch on this first. The I signed up for the 2020 Chicago Marathon, got canceled because of the pandemic. They moved me over to the 2021 Chicago Marathon. I had already planned a vacation for that year, a year in advance for that weekend. Couldn't do the 2021 Chicago Marathon. They luckily moved me to the 2022 Chicago Marathon, and I finally was able to do that. So I finished it last year in October. Uh, so
Mhm.
my experience with that was moved around because of the pandemic and pre approved plans, I guess. But just to clarify, that is why I ran it last year instead of 3 years ago. So
Okay.
going back to your question, I think okay. So I want to go touch on this first. Is like I don't like you can run and you don't need anything besides shoes. You could run in bare feet if you really wanted to. It'd probably hurt your feet, but I know and I've seen people who do that or wear those barefoot shoes that have almost no padding on them. They're just really thin, like it's almost running on your feet, but it protects your feet from like the little rocks, I guess. Um, I would say that you can get into running from $0 to what you already have right now, or you can spend money on equipment that you want that you think may help you. And I think the equipment that you do spend money on will help. I don't think that everybody needs it. And I think everyone kind of can pick and choose like based on how they feel. This was my first experience running a marathon and I wanted to be safe and I wanted to have the stuff that I felt was going to allow me to finish the race, but also like, because if you do spend some more money, you may help, like that equipment may help you prevent injuries and, maybe get a better time. I don't really think the timing matters all that much, but I think spending that money on equipment was really for me to preventing myself from hurting myself like permanently. Um,
Mhm.
So I think that going on that scale, I spent the higher end of the money. I bought new shoes from REI, which I didn't realize going into it that they made so many different kinds of running shoes. I thought I had running shoes already, and that was not the case. Like for runners and experienced runners, they have running shoes, and there's brands like Brooks, Hoka, that are really popular that make really really great running shoes and they level like different in padding levels and based off of your stride and things like that. It's insane how technology based the running shoes are, and I did a little bit of a test which you can do for free at a lot of stores. They test your arches, they test like where your foot lands on the ground, and then they can kind of find a shoe for you that like best fits your type of run, which I really think is very helpful. So they picked out a shoe for me. I would say the shoes probably cost me about like $200. So those are expensive. But I did see a ton of people at the marathon not wearing Hokas and Brooks and like these really nice running shoes. Like I did, like you can see people running it anytime. You got to find out what works for you. And the reason I decided to get those was because I was running in Adidas at the beginning, shoes I already owned, and they were hurting my calves. They were hurting my shins. My back was hurting. and I was like, I need to figure out why I'm hurting so bad. And it's because the shoes I was using weren't like too great for running long distances. And they didn't have the padding that I needed for my foot. So that's something to look into if you are having injury troubles. But then I purchased like a fanny pack for my run, and that was just wrapped around my waist. And I carried some goos in there, which are like, I don't know if you want me to explain goos really quick. It's like just you open up a little to go plastic thing, and then you
Mhm.
squeeze it into your mouth like jello almost. But it's like it's got like
It
30 grams of carbs in it, and it gives you a lot of energy. So I had to get used to eating those. And I know they gross out a lot of people and they don't love them, but I kind of just decided I was going to just go all in. So I was going to accept the fact that I was going to have to eat these nasty jello like packages every once in a while. And then after that, you didn't really need a whole lot. Like uh, I already had shorts. I bought like, I guess I did one thing. My last purchase I'll recommend though is you can get socks for like 15 bucks, one pair of socks, but they're like running socks and they stay dry all the time when your feet sweat. And that was huge because you're gonna mess up your feet if you're using cotton socks to run long distances, especially when it's hot out and you're sweating. Like your feet are gonna get blistered up, they're gonna get disgusting. And these socks that have like they're really soft, but they don't like absorb water very well. So they actually allow that sweat to kind of dribble off, and so much nicer in my feet. Like my feet were cool afterwards, and you could feel the socks after a long run and they were dry. So that was probably the biggest purchase that I made.
I'm gonna
But
mention 2 more things that you forgot, and I don't mean to embarrass you with them. I think it's actually 2 things that I never thought about, you didn't think about, and that's a real issue in the running community, and it's chafing cream or whatever, like the Glide for your body, and then
yeah,
it's nipple
that's
covers.
this all comes with running marathon. If you're thinking about picking up running just as a hobby, you don't need this stuff. I would just maybe recommend the socks and maybe a good pair of shoes if you're going to do it often. But for running a marathon, when you have to get up past 10 to 15 miles training, you begin to chafe everywhere. And you chafe in all the normal spots like when you get out of the beach or something like that and you're all wet, but it is a huge problem and you have to stop running if it can be really painful. I know from firsthand experience and then not being able to walk for a couple days after that. So yeah, that body glide is a great thing. It's like a deodorant stick, and you kind of just put it in the spots where you think you're gonna chafe. Sometimes I put it in my armpits too, because if you're wearing a shirt that has sleeves, like short sleeves, the armpits are gonna chafe as well because that sleeve rubs up and down on your armpit while you're running. I wore a tank top for that sole reason, not to have to worry about that. And then also the nipple covers for sure. If you're wearing a shirt, a tighter shirt especially, it's gonna rub up on your nipples a lot, and it's gonna help. Like your nipples are gonna hurt and they're gonna get like sore if you don't wear those coverings. So I wore them during the marathon. I didn't wear them during the half marathon, and I didn't need them. But I think they're essential if you're gonna wear a tighter shirt, or especially if you're gonna wear a shirt that wraps around your arms, like goes either long sleeve or short sleeve. That's gonna help a lot because those are things that I just kept learning about running. Like I was running training for this marathon and just learning about running, and people were like, "Oh, you don't have nipple covers? What are you doing?" And I'm like, I did not know I needed that. Like I was just here to run. And so yeah, hopefully this can be a one-stop shop for the things you need because I took me like months to figure out all these things.
No, and that's why I wanted to bring that up, not to, again, to embarrass you, but it's a real issue that you came across and I saw you in pain and it's not anything I would have thought of, you know? But long distance running
That's
is
terrible.
so hard on your body. And it's not even just on your legs. It's everything. So thank you for touching on that. I do want to go back in time and talk about or touch on again how you mentioned you're not a runner and you weren't a runner before this. I think that's really important to recognize again because I know that's like the first question people ask marathon runners or long distance runners in general. Oh, you've been doing this your whole life, or you are really into this. Like, no, you can just be interested in doing something, pushing your comfort zone, like you mentioned. So I think that's really important. So, as a non runner, how was your training experience?
Yeah, I think like I've done a marathon and a half marathon now, and I'd still probably consider myself not a runner. I would say that I run sometimes. I wouldn't consider myself a runner, but I also don't think that there's a specific level of running you have to get to be considered a runner. It's like if you run, you're a runner, probably. So I think people have in their mind, like when they're getting started, like there's these, you kind of have like this picture in your head, like this person who wears really short shorts and can run forever and can got like bright colored shoes on and a tank top and just, gliding. And I think that's what a lot of people think is a runner. But if you go to one of these marathons and you see the people that are running full 26.2 miles, you're going to realize quickly that there is a lot of definitions of a runner and that there are people of all
Mhm.
shapes and sizes from all backgrounds that are all trying to accomplish the same goal, which is really cool
Mhm.
and one of my favorite things about the marathon. But you can like that picture of a runner in your head, it goes away immediately because everybody looks completely different, but they're all, and when you get to the finish line, you see people finishing the marathon. You're like, I never would have thought like that somebody who looks like that could finish a marathon. Like it's I don't know why that's people's stigma of a runner, but I think that is something that kind of pulls people away from running because they're like, "Oh, I'm not a runner." It's like once you start running and you run consistently, you're a runner. It doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter your time. All that matters is that you can run. So I think one of those things that the stigma holds a lot of people back from trying that this specific goal, I think, or even getting into running at all. Um, there was a huge
Mhm.
learning curve for me when I was learning how to run, and because I never really like did any long distance running before this, obviously, but I didn't really know a lot of people who did because I wasn't on the cross country team, so I didn't have a lot of friends that were into long distance running, and so the learning curve, and my family's not into it at all either. So the learning curve was tough, but you do meet a lot of cool people through telling people that you're running that also run and give you advice and give you really good tips on how to do it. And the more you learn and meet people that are also doing that, the more you become a runner. And you start to notice that as you go on with your training and as those months go by and you look back at your transformation between, oh, I can't run a mile without my back hurting or my knees collapsing, like, and then you look back and you finish 26 miles and yeah, you're dead, but you never thought you could do that. And you kind of look into the advice that a lot of people gave you on the way, the tips that people are saying that, hey, this could help you. I would try this. Make sure you try this during your training before you do it in the marathon. It's really cool to kind of have people that support you and you kind of see those people that reach out and are like, hey, if you need any help, let me know. I've been doing this for a while. So now, yeah, I guess now that I have that experience and I've had really great people giving me that advice and helping me and supporting me, I'm glad to be able to hopefully help somebody in the future kind of watch this and look into it and be like, hey, well, maybe I can get into running. Maybe I can try it a little bit, see how it goes. Um, because personally, I think if you have um, two legs and you can walk, you can also run. So I think it's something that everybody can do, and it's really great experience if you want to try it.
I like that you talked about that and went into depth because I think that's so important. And it's really nice to know people in the running community are so willing to help and share their experiences and help you learn from their own. So I like that you're also doing that as well.
The community I want to touch on really quick is awesome, and I didn't even know it was there when I started. The community of runners
Mhm.
and people who have run like these events before is amazing, and they're always so willing to help and give back to other people who are trying to get into it. I met some really great people, a couple of our friends' parents who had done it, and they helped me a ton, and they were able to, help me. I had to fundraise. I did my marathon through fundraising for a charity, and they helped me fundraise. They were reaching out to their friends saying, like, their runner community, and saying, "Hey, this guy's trying to get into it again. Like, want to help him out." Like, it was so awesome the support I found completely randomly through the running community. So I think it's a great, like, it's a very uplifting community. Everyone's there to kind of help everybody get further and further. It's not like a whole competition. As long as you're not trying to win the marathon, there's a healthy level of competition and just like community there to like lift everybody up and say, "Hey, you can do this. We can do this together." And just you notice that in the environment in the first event that you go to or even watch, you kind of notice the amount of support that people have for each other. It's just a very happy environment when you're at one of these events too, and you can just see the community thriving, which is awesome.
Something I do wanna mention too is watching you train for this and all that, you were really doing this, for yourself, and running is a one-man sport, especially a marathon, like, you're racing yourself, you're not racing with I guess unless you do the relay or whatever, but it turned you from racing just for yourself into racing for others once these people started really supporting you and donating to you and, helping you out, helping support you. Because I remember even like days before the race, you kind of got nervous, being like, I don't want to let them down. It turned you from running for yourself to running it for other people, which was really cool.
Yeah. Because you get all this support and you're like, all right, there's absolutely no way I can back out now because I've paid for this fully and I have a ton of people who have supported me throughout my training. Like, I'm doing this for them, and just kind of seeing them, get super excited and be like, "That's awesome! Everyone's really excited for you." Um, yeah, I think it's one of the greatest things that I kind of fell into for sure that I didn't really know I was going to get myself into.
If you guys love gold jewelry as much as I do, you have to check out Slide Jewels. Slide Jewels is a jewelry brand that crafts contemporary and affordable pieces from high quality stainless steel. From earrings, necklaces, rings, and bracelets, Slide has pieces for everyone. Use code to some extent to get 30% off your purchase. Links and promo code will be in the show notes, so check it out.
Okay, so taking it back a notch, walk us through your training routine, or I guess were you in a routine? Did you eat certain foods? Did you train certain muscles? Because I know you at least went into the gym as well as ran. So walk us through kind of what that looked like. How did you find your training routine, and what did that look like?
Yeah, so I looked up just a simple training routine. You just look up marathon training for beginners online, and there's a ton of different training routines that you can do. Figure out which one kind of works for you, works around your schedule as well, because it is a time commitment, and I know everybody has different schedules. So I had to find one that kind of worked around my schedule too, and a lot of that entails running long distances in your free time on the weekends when if you're everyone's like going to have a good time or people are doing things on the weekends. Sometimes you can't be a part of that because you got to stick to your training, and I definitely realized that after a while. But I think initially finding that training that works for you was very helpful. I can't tell you how to train because you're a different person than me. We train differently. And so I think in terms of like eating wise, I pretty much stuck to the same diet. I would just eat like high carb foods after I would run. I drink chocolate milk and stuff. One of the
Mhm.
nice things about running all the time is that your metabolism's pretty quick and you burn a lot of calories, so you can kind of eat whatever you want to. And I noticed I was enjoying that because my stomach became almost an empty pit after I would run a long distance because I could just consume food all day long and not even really notice how much I was eating, which was which was pretty cool. But I think in terms of the diet, I don't think you really need to change too much besides maybe eating some high carb foods like before and after a long run, because that's just how your body's going to help regenerate itself. And then what was the last one was?
Training certain muscles. Did you train certain muscles when you
Oh
went
yeah,
into the
yeah, yeah.
gym?
I think so. I enjoy sometimes I enjoy like strength training as well to combat it, and I think it's important to at least train your legs once or twice a week.
Mhm.
Um, because you want your muscles to be able to hold up in a really long race like that. And you want them to be able to continue to work for you instead of working against you, especially when you get to like closer to the end of the race or you're 18 miles in, but you still have 8.2 miles to go. It's like once you get there, your muscles are like, hey, I don't want to be running anymore. And you start to crash down and you want that training to be there to help you out and those muscles to be there to help you out. So I think, strength training legs a little bit was important for me. I got that piece of advice from somebody else, so this isn't a brand new thing, but I think that was really important. And then I think, more about still getting some exercise, even though you can't run every day, right? So running every day and running long distances every day is going to take a really hard toll on your body. And I don't think that is something a lot of people can do, is run all the time and run every day, because I didn't realize how many injuries can kind of spur up from running, because it's such a hard impact on your legs and the ground and your muscles and your joints that it's not something that is sustainable for a really long time. Um, some people can obviously do it, but for me at least, I was pretty injury prone. Like I was dealing with injuries throughout my entire training, and I think the strength training helped, keep those, relying more on my muscles than my joints, and so I think it's just a way to get injury to help prevent injuries. One thing I will at least for 30 minutes to an hour a day, and I'm not even running anymore. It's just, or I'm not running right now, I guess. And so, but when I'm training, like I'm stretching an hour to 2, and you have to make sure that you're as loose as possible all the time. It's like sometimes it sucks because stretching can be so monotonous and so like you just sit there and stretch, and like a lot like that's very static stretching was what I was doing, and kind of just sitting there and stretching your hamstrings, and like I would put something on the TV, but it would just take up a ton of my time. I think stretching is really key, though. I would not want you to get injured trying to do something like this. So preventing injuries is really, really key. And it starts with stretching. Stretch before you do it and stretch after you do your exercise as well, because that is when your muscles are warm and that's when you'll make progress on your stretches. And I think that I would recommend it to everybody. Stretching is like probably one of the number one injury prevention ways to run.
Coming from the stretching king, Lex, literally, we could be at a grocery store, a gas station, a retail store, literally anywhere, and he will be on the wall or on the floor stretching or like touching his toes. It could be anywhere. But you also aren't injured, so it obviously works.
Yeah, it definitely works. And if you have to public stretch once in a while, then it's worth it. I'd rather do that than have to deal with an injury. So I'm okay with that. A little embarrassment. I think it's more embarrassing for the people around me than me. So
because I like look around and I'm like, where'd he go? And all of a sudden he's like on the floor. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, to get in, that's a good segue because I do want to ask you, how did you overcome injuries, self-doubt, fears you had? What did that look like?
The people that were kind of telling me, hey, like it's super possible to do this. And I know you have a lot of doubt, like, oh, this looks really hard. But if you train the right way, your body will take you to the finish line. The adrenaline that you'll get towards the end of the marathon will take you to the finish line. I don't have any doubt about that. I think that you do have to be prepared, and a lot of people that had run before were telling you that.
I do want to say shout out to our friends Blake, Nolan, Eden, Nate, and Ansley too for coming. They traveled to Chicago to come see. And then for the people that are listening to this that know, marathons are not for me, running's not for me, but you still want to support, make sure to don't come empty handed. Bring a sign, make something, because it makes the runners feel, it's nice for them to like look at something, and it's nice to see them smile back. So for Lex's marathon, I made fat heads of kind of every different phase of his life. So there's like a baby one, the awkward like middle school age one, and then one when he was older. And all of our friends and his family were holding those up just so he can see that we're there supporting him. And then I was the only one at your half marathon, but I brought a sign that said, just like a funny sign, and it was kind of generalized. But it was so cool just seeing everyone, run by it and smiling is cool. So don't come empty handed, even if you're not running the marathon, support. Well, thank you for sharing, and good luck to anyone that's, got inspired and wants to try running out there, but take care of yourself. And thanks for listening and joining us today. Happy Tuesday, happy late Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you next week.